Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Emergency Preparedness for Caregivers. My name is Lucy Gerland, and I am a caregiver specialist with the Fairfax County Area Agency on Aging. Um, we have a very special presenter with us today. We're fortunate to have Suleiman Brown, and Suleiman is the Assistant Coordinator for the Fairfax County Office of Emergency Management. He oversees the Community Engagement, Training, and Exercise Division. Suleiman has over 20 years experience in both national and international emergency management incidents. He has participated in over 38 international crises as well as multiple local events and activations. In his current position, Suleiman's duties include outreach coordination and training and exercise coordination for Fairfax County. He has worked for Fairfax County for over 13 years, and we're very fortunate to have him, and he's got great information for us. I'll turn it over to him in a second. I just would like you all to know that this webinar is being recorded and will be available to re-listen to after the webinar. I'll be sending out a link to that. And also, you are all in listen-only mode. So if you would like to ask a question during the webinar, you will see a little dashboard and there's a questions box there. Just type your question in and I will ask Suleiman your question. So now let me turn it over to our presenter. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lucy. Appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. As Lucy said, my name is Suleiman Brown. So I'm going to run everybody through some PowerPoint presentation here. I don't want to, read, death by PowerPoint. So I'll kind of go away from some of the slides every now and then to talk a little bit more about it. It looks like we're going to wait to the end for questions, but please put them in to Lucy so she can provide them to me as I'm going through the presentation. So if everybody can see my first slide, just bear with me for a second because I want to read something that we always talk about when we're presenting to people. So it'll take me a couple minutes to read this, but I think it's important when we're talking about caregivers and people with disabilities and how we take care of them during emergencies. So we always ask people, what experiences have you had during fire drills or emergencies at work? Some may wonder about the relevance of this take charge of your life approach for people who need various kinds of support. Unfortunately, we've had evidence from Hurricane Katrina and other disasters in history that people with disabilities are too often left until last. The dramatic death toll from Katrina with people with disabilities is brutal testimony. People waited for big systems to take care of them. Too often it didn't happen. Big systems were struggling to cope themselves. Communications failed, transportation collapsed, interagency struggles consumed valuable time and resources. We all know stories the point that in an emergency, unless we are very lucky, big systems are also in emergency mode, and many of the people we know and care about will not survive until the big systems recognize and get back into action. And even then, too often, people with disabilities will be low on the priority list for attention. So, do we sit and wait for someone to take care of us when the evidence suggests it's chancy? Or do we take charge and invest in making, renewing, and re energizing our own personal networks that will make our daily lives more interesting and give as much real security as there is for any of us in a serious emergency of any kind? A frightening piece of research from New York City affirms this strategy. In a controlled experiment, an actor fell in the street with classic heart attack symptoms. Most people walked right by it. In the second scenario, after the fall, the actor asked for help and few responded. In the third, the actor asked people to dial Dr. X at the hospital. People responded with a clutch of their cell phones dialing. Many of us want to help. A lot of us want to help, but without appropriate clues, we become passerbys. In disasters, it's the same. Most of us are willing to help, at least a little, but we are paralyzed by the lack of understanding about what to do. And then we move on. when we know someone, when we have shared a cup of coffee, gone to Starbucks with someone, worship together, etc., we have a little bit more knowledge. So my intention today is to give you a little bit more of that knowledge to not only help the person that you're taking care of, but to also pass that along to people that you know. All right? Okay, so I will go ahead and get into my presentation. Sorry about that. Sorry. That's my Apple Watch. My apologies. So the agenda, we're going to talk about who we are in emergency management. We're going to talk about the all hazards approach. We're going to talk about personal preparedness, one step at a time, and tips to help you prepare. So our mission in emergency management is to coordinate and collaborate with our partners to reduce the impact of emergencies and disasters through a comprehensive emergency management program. Now that's long, but essentially what that means is emergency management is the coordinating agencies for emergencies in the county, as well as assisting our residents. So you're used to fire, police, sheriff, those are public safety agencies that are out front. We are kind of behind the scenes. I always like to describe emergency management kind of as, in a sports analogy, is that you always have the players, you have the fans. What emergency management is are the referees. Our job is to make sure that everybody who's involved in the emergency are playing in a sandbox together, that they have the type of equipment, knowledge, resources in order to assist our residents. So we're a small agency. The PowerPoint, the slide that you see up there is almost everybody that's in our agency. We're about 18 employees, but we have our hands and our arms in everything emergency related in Fairfax County. And we're the ones, that run our emergency operations center when we have an emergency. So I'll talk about some of the things that we do. Again, I talked about coordination, collaboration, communication, planning, training and exercise, operations, and outreach. This is an outreach function where I'm talking to people about what we would like for you to do to help your clients as well as yourself. Quickly, one of the training and exercise things we do is we bring in people from the outside to participate in our exercises so that we have players. We can teach them how to operate during an emergency, get them involved in what we do on a daily basis. So that is part of what we're doing right now with this presentation. Obviously, emergencies cost a lot of money. There's always a financial piece there, as well as a grants piece, which is federal money that's provided to local jurisdictions to provide kits to you, to provide information to you, items such as that. And we do that here in emergency management. Local hazards. There's a universal human tendency to avoid thinking about possible emergency. That's normal. I don't want anyone on the call to think that that's abnormal. The avoidance has greater consequences for people with disabilities than for people without disabilities. Do you know what you need to do if your life is threatened by a disaster? Mainly in the headlines, you don't see it a lot in the reports, but too many people with disabilities died during the blockbuster storms, Katrina, Sandy, and Irene. We'll never know how many were injured or left homeless by the tornadoes that recently ripped through the middle of the country. I read that because that's important. People are afraid to actually think that an emergency can happen, specifically in our area because we don't see it a lot. Sure, we see a little bit of snow. We may get a call about some type of tornado, but we don't have the Houston or New Orleans or Florida or some of our Midwest states type of emergency here very often. So people get complacent and they don't want to prepare. So I say learn what we have in our area. We constantly have droughts throughout the summer. Hurricanes. We don't get the hurricane waters, obviously, because we're not on the coast, but we do get significant winds. We do get significant rain. We have a lot of low-lying areas in Fairfax County, which can become flooded. That disproportionately affects people with disabilities and you guys. Tornadoes. We have tornadoes every now and then, mostly out to our west, but a tornado can be devastating within a matter of minutes. So you have to be prepared to make quick decisions to help yourself as well as the person that you're taking care of. Flooding. Make sure you're aware of where you actually live. Are you in the flood area? If we get significant rain, is that going to affect where you live? Is it going to affect your ability to leave if you have to? These are things that you should be doing before the event and not during the event. In emergency management, the first thing that we do is called mitigation. And mitigation is basically saying, let's plan prior to an event to make sure that we're prepared when that event happens. So we're suggesting to you and the people that you take care of to take all of the advantage of a what we call a blue sky day like today, where nothing's going on, to prepare yourself for an emergency. Snowstorms. We get at least 3 to 4 significant snowstorms every single year here in the Commonwealth of Virginia and in the National Capital Region. We should be prepared for that right now when it's nice outside and we don't have 8, 9, 10 inches of snow on the ground. Fires. A small fire in a house, a small fire in an apartment complex can become a large scale event in a matter of minutes if you're not prepared to either depart your location or go to a safer place within the building or apartment. What do you do if it's a spontaneous emergency? And what I mean by spontaneous emergency, something like a hazardous material incident. If we all live in this area, we have lots of highways, we have lots of streets. There are constantly trucks that are coming through that have hazardous material uh, uh, things in the vehicle. If that should explode and we have a windy day and we have to evacuate a place or we have to tell people to shelter in place, be prepared to do that. That could mean sheltering at home, sheltering at school, work, place of worship, medical care facilities, anywhere in your car. You have to be able to and be prepared to do that. And evacuate. Do you have a plan to actually leave your facility immediately? And I'm not talking 3 or 4 hours down the line. I'm talking immediately where you need to leave within 10 minutes. Do you have a plan to get your not only the caretakers but the person that you're taking care of out of that facility in a reasonable amount of time? If it's not possible to leave out of that facility, is there somewhere within that place that can be considered a safe zone that you take that individual to until the emergency is over? And the bottom line is if you are prepared for one, you're prepared for all. Where all hazards approach agency, county, region, emergencies happen, but the same type of things that can happen to an individual are the same regardless of the event. So we want you to prepare for everything. Reasons why individuals choose not to prepare. One of the main reasons is people are overwhelmed because we come out and we talk to you and we say, okay, you need to go out and get this kit. You need to buy batteries. You need to buy flashlights. You need to buy clothes. You have to have money. And we give you a list of 30 or 40 different things. It's costly to a lot of people. It just may be too hard. You can't just go to Walmart and say, I want to pick up all my stuff, and Walmart or Target or one of the big box stores is going to have everything that you need. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. So what we want people to do is understand that you don't have to have your kit all today. Take the opportunity to go out and get that kit for yourself and the person that you're taking care of right now. One thing. If that means going out and buy, bottled water, then go out and buy bottled water. And then next payday or the payday after that or the next opportunity you have, go back and get the other thing. So we're not asking that you have it all in one day. We're asking that you start to prepare yourself to have a reasonable kit. Now, here in emergency management, we can help you out with that a little bit by providing you with some basic materials that come with a starter kit. Here are some statistics that most people are not aware of, but 52% of families have not thought of any plans. That goes more into what I was saying earlier about the complacent piece here. Is if it doesn't happen, you start to believe, oh, it's not going to happen here in Fairfax County. I don't need to prepare for it. As an emergency manager, that's frightening for me to see that half our county is not thinking about an emergency plan. 51% of people have no idea what to do if they need to shelter in place for more than 72 hours. One of the things that we always talk to people about is being prepared to take care of yourself for 72 hours, which is 3 days. We would like people to be able to do it for a longer period of time, but we think by the time 3 days gets here that some type of public safety personnel are going to either be looking for individuals or trying to confirm what has happened to them. So 3 days sheltered in your house, sheltered in your vehicle, sheltered at work is what we recommend for our county residents. 36% of people have done not done anything to prepare. Again, that's another frightening number for me as an emergency manager because I know that if we have a significant event, that public safety is not going to be able to get to you in what you consider to be in a reasonable amount of time. And I'll just give you an example. Most people don't realize how many firefighters we have in Fairfax County. So at any given time, you probably have about 300 to 350 firefighters supporting the entire county at about 42 different stations. Think about that if we have a significant event. Fairfax County is 420 square miles, metropolitan area, rural areas. Our fire departments are spread out across the country, across the county. If we have a significant event, the likelihood that they're going to be able to get to you in that 2 to 5 minute radius, which you are expecting now during an event. So that's why we try to get people to prepare themselves to take care of themselves during an emergency. What to think about before a disaster? Again, mitigation. Recent disasters revealed that people with access and functional needs face the biggest challenges in the following areas. Notification of a disaster. So are you on a notification system? Do you receive messages? Do you have someone that can call you to tell you what's going on? That's important to start looking at right now prior to the event. How do you evacuate? Again, we talked about this earlier. Do you have a plan that says, if I need to evacuate, this is what we are going to do to evacuate you? Is there another location in the place that you take care of an individual that you can take them? Access to sheltering, accessible sheltering. That's a big issue. That's something that we're in emergency management working with the Red Cross working with our Human Services Division to try to ensure that should we have to open a shelter, that we're inclusive for everyone. So we want to make sure that you're looking at that as well. One of the things about sheltering, I want to make it sure that it's clear here, is we don't send out our shelter locations prior to an event. We've had calls here in emergency management, people asking that question. And the reason we don't do that is because we don't know where the event's going to take place. So we don't want to tell people, hey, we're going to open up this rec center in Huntington, and then something happens in that area, and then our residents assume they can come to Huntington. Because we actually may set up that shelter miles and miles away from the event so that they don't become part of the emergency. So when something happens, we will put information out through our notification system, through the news, to make sure that everybody's aware of where they can go for assistance. Access to medication, refrigeration, and backup power. Those are key. There are a lot of people that are probably on this call, like myself, that take some type of medication. You don't think about that when you're evacuating. You don't think that you need to stop in your cabinet and get medication. You just leave. So what we're saying is document what it is that you take. Make sure that you have a to-go bag of medication. Make sure you have on some type of communication plan whether it needs to be refrigerated or not. These are things that people at the shelter need to know so that they can provide you with the information. And backup power, batteries, maybe a backup battery pack, whatever it is, the power potential medical devices that you need. We want you to either take that with you or document that it's needed so when you get to a location, we can take care of that for you. Access to mobility and assistive devices. Again, that's in the same bucket as far as I'm concerned with medication and backup power. That's a need that you have to have when you're going to a location. So make sure prior to the disaster that you're making plans with the person you're taking care of or yourself to have that. And then again, I talked about access to information. I'm going to talk a little bit later about our notification system, but we provide those that type of information to people with disabilities, to our county residents prior to, during, and after an event. So we want you to think about that. Making a plan. I talked a little bit about having a communications plan. And all a communication plan is, it just helps you determine what it is that you're going to do. We in emergency management and public safety, we practice drills, we exercise all the time so that we don't forget when the emergency comes. We don't expect for you to be that thorough. What we do request is that you have some type of communications plan that you can grab off of your your refrigerator, something you can grab out of a drawer, and basically tell you what you should do during an emergency. So that's what we're asking you to do when I say communications plan. Out of town contact. Again, this is something a lot of people may not know about. When there is a major incident in the national capital region, keep in mind we have over 5.2 million people in this area, that one of the first things that are going to not work is a telephone or a cell phone, because the lines are going to get tied up because so many people are going to be trying to use it. So having that home phone, having that different type of phone that you can use is a priority. And having an out of town contact, somebody that we can call in Maryland, someone we can call in Ohio, someone you can call in California, to inform them that we have a situation here and how their family members doing or any help that they need. Shelter in place. Again, because of the amount of people that we have in the national capital region, the reality is that you're not going to be able to get into your vehicle and travel anywhere of significance during an emergency, because there's mainly three ways out of the national capital region. 66 West, which takes you out towards West Virginia, over the Shenandoah Mountains. 95 North, which takes you up into Baltimore, Philadelphia. 95 South, which takes you down into the Richmond area. So none of those areas are going to be open for you to travel on the road. So we say learn how to shelter in place, know how to survive in your own house, have a kit to help you survive. Meeting places. This is more if something should happen to your house, or you need to get out of your neighborhood. In that communication plan with family members of the person that you're taking care of or your family members, have a rendezvous place. I have a 25-year-old daughter. We have a rendezvous place in case I can't get into my house, she can't get into her apartment. We meet at a specific place. If we can't contact each other with phones, at least I know that within an hour or so, she's going to be at that place, or I know there's something wrong with her. So we ask that people do that. Plan for pets and service animals. Again, things that people don't necessarily think about when there's an emergency that comes up. Know the laws regarding pets and service animals in shelters. There's a lot of miscommunication out there and a lot of confusion with what's considered a service animal and what isn't. Whether or not you can bring animals into Fairfax County shelters. We can provide you with this information. We can provide you with the links, but please look into that because that's important. People don't like to leave their animals. They are considered loved ones to a lot of people. So we wouldn't want someone to show up at a location and by law we wouldn't be allowed to have them bring their animal into a shelter. That's not something we want to stress people out when we're already dealing with an emergency. I talked briefly earlier about planning for alternative safe location. You can do that. Prepare a disaster kit and carry it if applicable. So I will give you an example of myself. I have a kit in my vehicle. I have a kit in my desk. I have a kit that's in my home. So regardless of where I am, I have the capability of grabbing a bag and going out with a kit. Those that have animals, make sure in that kit you have food, toys, a leash, medication that your animal may be taking. All that's in your kit. So one swoop, grab, and then go to where you need to go. Make sure your pets and service animals are identified. Take pictures of yourself with your animal. Make sure they have the right attire on so that people can identify that animal as a service animal. It just makes the process a little bit easier. It allows public safety to be a little bit clearer on what it is that you need or you may not need. Make copies of all your vaccination and shot history. You can do that if some of you have traveled. I've traveled a lot. We used to carry these cards called WHO cards. They were yellow cards. But if you want to type it up or something like that, make sure that you have a copy of that with you so that you can give to the people who are going to assist you. And then recent photos of yourself, what a person you're taking care of, your animal, pictures so that people know who they're dealing with. Other things that you want to have are driver's license, copies of that, birth certificate, copies of that, bank account numbers, copies of that. Keep in mind, if we have a significant emergency here, more than likely the power is not going to be available. So what can you not, or what is difficult to get to if you don't have power? And that is banks. You're not going to be able to go to teller machines because the power is not working. So we request or we require or ask, recommend that people have a certain amount of money in cash in their kit. And we're not talking hundreds of dollars, but anywhere between $10 to $50 that can get you most of the stuff you need here in the United States. So keep that in mind. Um, some of the things that I just went over here. Loved one is bedbound, have bedside supplies, medical records, medicine, 3-day supply of backup medication, all the names. And the reason that we want names of the medication, because if you come to a shelter or you come to a place where the county is going to help you, in the immediate interim, we have the ability to get medication filled to take care of you. So if we have those names, it makes it a little bit easier. Backup power for electrical equipment, we talked about that. Expiration dates on food, water, battery. Keep in mind that even the canned goods have expiration dates on them. One of the things that I always talk to people about as far as having is a actual manual can opener. Those of us that are around my age understand that, but a lot of the can openers nowadays are electric. Well, if you don't have power, it won't give you the access to open up your canned goods. So have a manual one that you can open it with. Bottled water does not last forever. We recommend that every 3 months you typically change it out. So when you buy it from one of the big box stores, put the date on it. 3 months later, use it to water your grass or something like that. Bring in another one so that you have good water. Mark emergency supplies. Store mobility close to you, consistent location. Save batteries by adjusting brightness. You don't need to have it, all the way up unless you have a seeing disability. But if not, bring it down so it saves the battery. Bring a change of clothes. When you're in an emergency, it's not necessary for you to have a week's worth of clothes where you change jeans or change shirts, every day. All you need is 1 or 2 outfits. It's about you surviving. It's not necessarily about how you look. It's not necessarily about how you smell. It really is about you surviving the incident. So take the least amount of clothes that you can, but make sure it's reasonable in case you get wet. You have a change of clothes to put on. Some type of bedding if possible. Sleeping bag, pillow, blanket. If you have the ability to carry that stuff, do that. A lot of these camping stores now have sleeping bags and pillows that can fold up into a very small, light carrying pack. Those are things that we recommend that you take with you. And then I talked about cash. Stay informed. This is a little bit about what we were talking about earlier. We have an emergency blog that when there's an incident that's going on, information is constantly pushed out to that. Most of the people nowadays have some type of phone, some type of internet access. You can and get information from our emergency blog that's pretty accurate. Dominion Power website, that tells you where the power outages are and where to get information about your area and when it's going to come back on if that's the case. So we ask people to visit that. Novac's the same. Some people in Fairfax have Dominion Power, others have Novac. VDOT snow plowing status. That's a very good site because it tells you where VDOT's going to be hitting your streets. Now keep in mind, VDOT during emergencies, snow emergencies, focuses on the main thoroughways first. They're going to do that for a day, potentially 2, depending on how much it snows. Then they're going to go to the second streets, and then they're going to go to the third level streets. So don't, if you're in a neighborhood, assume that VDOT's going to be there to shovel you out or clear your streets on the first day. That doesn't normally happen. And the last thing is a NOAA weather radio. Make sure that you have that. You can purchase these from any of the Lowe's or Home Depot. A lot of times we'll have raffles at some of our events where people can win weather radios from us. It's a good thing to have. It works anywhere in your house. So even if you don't have electricity, you have battery, you can get all the National Weather Service updates about the event. Here's Fairfax Alerts. If you haven't heard of it, Fairfax Alerts is our notification system, the official notification system of Fairfax County. 2 things that I want to point out to you. One, we have a subscription in there for caregivers. So if you're somebody who's taking care of somebody, you have the ability to receive information about an event that may affect the person that you're taking care of. You can sign yourself up, but you can also hit that subscription to receive that additional information. Um, some of the basics of the system, you can put 5 different locations in there. So if you want to know what's going on at home, at your office, maybe where you get your dialysis, maybe where your grandchildren or children live, you can do that. You can put in multiple addresses, and then when something happens in that specific area, you will get a notification about that. You can put 10 different ways that you want to receive it. Most people are not receiving their information on the internet at their desk. They're typically getting it on their phone, through their iPhone or their Android. We can send these messages to you via email, via text, however you want it. When it comes to traffic alerts or alerts that we don't consider to be life-threatening, you can set quiet times and say, I don't want to receive this alert between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. And then we also have the ability to sign up for it on a mobile app. So, some of our younger generation, they're kind of app crazy. We have the ability to have you sign up for our notifications via app as well. The Functional Needs Registry is the registry that's set up for people with access and functional needs. And what it asks you in there is, generally speaking, what your category is or what your functional needs is. We don't get out into the weeds, but we do like to know what, generally speaking, what access and functional needs that somebody has. So you can check those boxes. On a quarterly basis, we send out information to people in our access and functional needs community about the season that's coming up and some of the dangers that you could be facing during that season. So, for instance, in the summer, we send out something around the May, June timeframe to let you know that these are things that can happen when it gets hot. These are symptoms of stress or symptoms of overheating in the wintertime. We send out messages to say recharge your batteries, make sure everything is checked, just basic information. During the event, we're going to send you stuff to tell you what to do during an event. And then post, we're going to reach out and send messages like we do everybody else in the county with additional links to help you get back to pre-event status. And if you look on the bottom there, that's the actual link to go in and sign up for our alerts. It takes about 3 minutes for you to sign up, and then you'll be connected to the official notification system of Fairfax County. Get involved. This is, again, something that we always recommend to people when we're briefing them is you got to be involved. Advocate not just for yourself, but for the person that you're taking care of. Look to find better ways to get people equipment. Look at the procedures that we have in place or organizations that you're working with that have in place to make sure you're familiar with them. Participate in drills and exercises. Contact emergency management. We'll get you involved in some drill that we have so that you can get a better understanding of how we're going to support you and the person that you're taking care of during an emergency. Volunteer. We have lots of volunteer organizations in Fairfax County that work under public safety agencies to help our residents have a happier and more a safer life. CERT is one. Medical Reserve Corps, if you have any medical experience or you want to help out with the Medical Reserve Corps, you can do that through us. Readiness test. I'm going to leave this up here for about 30 seconds, just to let everybody take a quick look at it and ask yourself these questions and see if you're ready. I want to go to the last one, which is basically neighbors helping neighbors can be critical in an emergency. I cannot stress that enough, is that check on your neighbors, ask your neighbors to check on other neighbors. Most people are not going to ask for help because they think they can do it themselves. They think they're being a burden to somebody. Just stop by and ask them how they're doing if anybody needs any help. And here's some additional resources. If you want to come to our website, we have a lot of good stuff on there. ReadyNova.gov allows you to print off fillable forms, your communications plans, it gives you some list of things you should have. And then the National Caregivers Library there, caregiverslibrary.org. Again, these are things that people that work in your profession have put out, and we think it's helpful to uh, to helping people that you're taking care of. That kind of concludes my presentation, and I'm open for any questions that anyone would have.
Okay, thank you so much. That is a lot. And we do have some questions, and I do want to remind participants that there is a panel on your screen and you can type in any of your questions. So we have plenty of time for questions here. Um, so the first question is, you mentioned that Office of Emergency Management has basic materials for emergency kits. How can we find information on what this is and how to get those basic materials?
So we can, if you go to our website, we have a list of everything that we consider that you would need for a basic kit. The stuff that we pass out at our presentations is more information. We do give out crank flashlights, blankets that you can put on when you're cold, or blankets you can put on when you're hot. But that's not something we give out all the time. Most of our stuff is information to lead you in the right direction to get what you need. So go to our
Okay.
website, and there's a email on there to our outreach team, and then send us what you're looking for, and we could potentially get you a few of those. We obviously don't have enough to give to over 1 million people in Fairfax County, but we can give you a few to get you started.
All right. And I think what you said at the beginning was super important about the feeling of overwhelm that a person might have, but start with one thing and then add another and then another, as opposed to feeling like here's a list of 15 or 25 things that I need in an emergency kit and I have to get this done right away.
Absolutely, that's a great point, and that is what we recommend. And everybody's kit's going to be different. Where I live in Fairfax County is going to be different from someone who lives in another part of the county. What I have available to me is going to be different than somebody else. So not all kits are created the same, and they won't have the same stuff in it. So think about what you need and how you need to survive, and purchase that one at a time.
Now, you just said that, and we just had a question about um, buying the pre-made kits. What do you think about that?
I am not a big advocate of buying the pre-made kits because, again, you may be buying something that you don't really need. There are things in there that are universal, meaning water, some type of flashlight. Those things I have no problem with, but I do have problems with kits that are one size fits all, because in emergencies that's not the case. So what I would recommend is go look at our list, see things on there that you can purchase, and go out and purchase those, as opposed to buying those one size fits all kits.
Yes, and since a lot of our audience is caregivers, they may be outfitting more than one emergency kit, and
Absolutely.
mhm,
Yeah, I think that's
so
very
you have to.
important. Think about the person that you're taking care of and what they need.
Right. And with older adults that we often deal with, medications is extremely important. And you had some good tips about the medications there, having the supplies on hand and things.
Yep, absolutely.
I had read one thing also with regard to medications that I'll mention here, and that is to have a written copy of each prescription on a separate piece of paper and have that in your emergency management kit so that if you do need to get a prescription filled, you would have the prescription with you.
Yes, absolutely. You should have that. Write down what the medication is called, how many times you take it, the milligrams that they provided to you, as well as your doctor's number, because our public safety personnel who are trying to fill, or our health department personnel who are trying to fill these subscriptions, need to be able to call your doctor to confirm it. And once they do that, then your prescription can be filled. So have all that information in a bag, in a kit that you can carry with you and provide to the public safety personnel.
Great. Thank you so much. So you did mention the uh, is it called the Special Needs Registry, or is that what we used to call it?
Yeah, it's
Um,
called the Access and Functional Needs Registry. and it
Mhm.
is part of the sign up process for our Fairfax Alerts. But at the end, on the last page, it walks you through our access and functional needs community or section of the website. And all you do is put in a couple checks or check it, of your access and functional need. All that does is tells us, it gives us more information about you, and it makes us kind of tighten up our message to be specific towards a person who signed up for our system. So we don't use that information for anything else other than to make sure that the message that we're sending out to you benefits you. We don't want to overload your email or your phone with messages that aren't important. So that's what that's for. Excuse me.
And how about for the emergency responders? Is there a way to notify, let's say, our local fire department or the fire department that's local to our loved one that we may be a caregiver for, that this particular individual has special needs, is in a wheelchair, or has other physical or mental limitations?
Unfortunately, the way that our public safety responds is all hazards. So if there's a situation at an apartment complex or a house, our public safety personnel respond to be able to deal with anything that they come into. So they're not going to arrive at that caregiver's house or at that individual's house unprepared for any event. So even if fire and rescue knew that someone was bedridden, they would still respond to them in the same way, being prepared to take them out if necessary, or being prepared to help them, whatever that access and function need is when they get there. So, to answer your question, no, at this point we don't have that.
Okay, but the emergency responders should be prepared for anything.
Oh, absolutely, and they will be. They will not come in.
Mhm.
They won't be coming into your home unprepared.
Well, a good example of this was the recent apartment fire that we had for the Forest Glen Older Adults Apartment Complex, when one of the buildings burned down from a cigarette butt.
Yep.
And that was all older adults, and everybody got out safely.
They did, absolutely. And that's a testament, to the apartment complex and to the people who were there, were able to get out of that facility without anyone being hurt. Again, our fire and rescue department responded to that, all hazards, and they were prepared to do to pull people out or to get people directed to the hospital. All of our human services agencies, as well as emergency management, were out there to make sure that people had what they needed in order to uh, survive this event.
And that was amazing. And although all these agencies are amazing, it's still up to an individual to do their part. And that's part of your message also.
Absolutely. We believe in personal preparedness, and that's why we always say that now's the time to prepare for emergencies, not during the emergency. Take the opportunity, as I said before, the blue sky where it's nice outside. Go out and purchase what you need to purchase. Write those communications plans, which don't cost anything. Talk to your family about alternative plans if something happens. Build that clothes kit, that medication kit. Put it by your front door, so if you need to leave, you have the ability to do that. Do that now. That's part of the personal responsibility piece.
Yeah. Okay. That little quiz that you showed at the end, this person is asking, if we answered no to any of the questions on your quiz, do you have tips so we can work towards a yes?
Sure. Which one? Did you?
I think they just want to go kind of through them because these are such good questions. You did deal with the neighbors one, so let's do the top three.
Okay, so the top one talks more about transportation option and what's the nearest emergency shelter. So I kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. So from an evacuation standpoint, and I'm being honest here, in our area, if we have a significant event, evacuating is probably not an option out of this area. If you're talking about evacuating just out of your home, then you should develop a way or a kit, a communications plan on how you're going to get out. If there's a fire, are you going to? How do you get that individual out of an upstairs part? If there's a collapse of the facility, how do you get out? One of the things that I always talk to you about as far as fires are concerned is you can purchase what's called a fire ladder. which essentially hooks onto the frame of your window, and then the ladder is typically either light metal or rope that allows you to hang that all the way down to a place where you can jump off that rope and be in the back of the house or the front of the house. We recommend getting that. Transportation. If you need to get away from a facility, get to a safe distance until public safety arrives to take you to a safer location. We don't give out emergency shelter information prior to an event because that could change depending on the size and the scope of the event. But Fairfax County does have designated shelters across the county that we will open up if there is a need. So that's the first one. And the second one is, where are the shutoff valves for your household utilities or those are your loved ones? That's a very good point. Um, I know where mine is, and I had to look to find out where mine was. So I would suggest that everybody contacts your utility companies if you don't know where it is, and uh, ask them to come out and either show you or describe to you, where it is. Most of them are just a handle. You either turn right, turn left, on or off, or switch, turn on and off. So there's not a lot of difficulty with that. But just make sure that you take a look at that. In an emergency, local phone service may be shut down for extended amount of time. We talked about that. You need to have an out of area contact. Text typically will continue to work during an emergency, but telephone calls, if a lot of people jump on a call, they're going to get blocked. So you want to text. You want to have that rendezvous spot in case you can't get in touch with family or friends, and then go and meet that individual. So that's part of your communications plan.
Okay. And you did mention that you do presentations. Is that like a community presentation? And how could people find out about those if they want to do something more in person in addition to today's webinar?
Yeah, we do presentations. We do have kind of we have to have a certain amount of people, mainly because my staff is we only have two people, three people, and we can't go out and do a presentation for three or four people. We typically say we have to have at least 20 people in order to do the presentation, so that you know our information that we're putting out gets to a significant amount of people. The way to find that is to go on our website, go to emergency preparedness. There's an email on there that you send us your request for a presentation, and we'll reach back out to you to set that up.
Okay. And I have one last question. In the picture that you showed earlier of the Office of Emergency Management staff, which one is you?
Okay, I'll go back to that. So I am the gentleman from the right. If you see the Fairfax Alerts symbol right under the exclamation point, that's me.
That's you with an exclamation point right over your head. Okay.
That's me with the bald head.
Well, thank you so much for today and for all that great information. And now people have information on the Office of Emergency Management contact and your website and all that. And I can't thank you enough for doing this and giving us all some motivation to get out there and do some emergency preparedness planning. I will remind all the attendees that you will be getting a recording of this, and I have already sent out the slides this morning. When you sign off, there will be a brief survey, and we appreciate if you would take a moment to answer those questions. That helps us plan more webinars and for the future. So this is the final webinar of the 2018 series, and stay tuned to our various communications tools like our Caregiver Corner online newsletter and our website to find out about webinars in 2019. Thanks again, Suleiman, and thank you everybody who joined us today.
My pleasure. You guys take care.
Bye now.